Life is precious, and we all have the opportunity of living it to the fullest. Unfortunately, so few of us know how to manage it all. How do we account for our opportunities? How do we account for our time? How do we account for our relationships, health, spirituality, homes, finances, influence, and careers? How do we account for the one life we have to live? I am so glad you asked. In this program, you will find answers to all of these questions and more. Welcome to the Account for Your Life podcast with your host, the healthy accountant himself, Jay Moore.
Happy Wednesday, everybody, and I want to welcome you back to another episode of the I AFYL Podcast today. Here's what we're talking about: how to get out of a negative feedback loop. How to get out of a negative feedback loop. Man, I'm going to tell you, let's jump right into this. I'll tell you a story. And the story was, this is several years ago. I hired a coach, and I was working on, growing my accounting business, or at least learning what growth in the business looked like. I never really understood how it works. I just thought that, hey, you start a business and it'll just grow. I found out that that's not true. And so I was in that wasn't the negative feedback loop, but it was leading me to getting help. Does anybody ever needed help with something? It's kind of like you said to yourself, oh my goodness, my feet is hurting. Well, can I call a doctor? And that's how I felt when it came to my business. I needed to call a doctor in to help me to see, like, okay, where am I at? Like, why do I have this pain? And the doctor comes in. Here's the interesting thing about doctors. Doctors never come in and diagnose. They never come right in and diagnose. If you ever tried to diagnose a problem, don't diagnose the problem. Let the doctor ask the questions. So the doctor comes into your room. The doctor's going to ask questions. Say, hey, let's look at your ears. Let's look in your mouth. Let's look at your eyes. Let's take your, let's see what your heart rate is looking like. Let's do your pulse. What's your weight? Let's ask you some more questions. And the doctor's going to probe and probe until the doctor still gets to the point and says, let's run some tests. See, the doctor knows that, hey, you know what? I could just blurt out an answer here, but let's make sure we understand exactly what happened. And so the doctor sends you through the blood test. Now you get the blood test and they find out, they get your numbers and like, oh, okay, now I can see what's going on, what's normal, what's not. That's how it felt when I first when I hired my coach to help me grow my business. Coach is checking me out, seeing what's going on, watching my progress, asking questions. And then one day the coach says, hey, let's schedule a call. I'm like, all right, coach is going to give me some more word. Coach is going to give me a word today, boy. Oh yeah. Coach was acting interesting. The coach was being very stern and almost like if the coach was like a Bobby Knight. If you know who Bobby Knight is, he used to be a basketball coach at Indiana, and he was feisty. Now it felt like I was in a session with Bobby Knight, because this guy he was going off on me, but in a very professional way. And it just got to the point where he says, Jay, you are in a negative feedback loop. And I'm like, what is that? Like, what is a negative feedback loop? Okay. So the first thing let's break down that sentence. What is a negative feedback loop? Negative feedback. First is negative. So that means I'm getting something back that's negative. What is a loop? A loop is a circle, right? So if I'm getting something back, like if I'm getting this negative feedback and it's constantly in a circle, then it's constantly like you're just getting it over and over and over. It's kind of like, you keep having the recurring problem over and 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 over. And has anybody ever had that, same problem over and over and over and over? Can't seem to shake the same problem over and over and over. Now, there's a lot of problems that we can shake. Well, there's a lot of things that I'm still looking to. I'm not in those negative feedback loops anymore because I know what those are. And I figured out how to fix it when I get into a funk or in a negative loop. And I'm going to tell you how I did it. But before I do, I just want to kind of focus more in on the fact that people get in negative feedback loops. And these negative feedback loops, what happens is they speed up. They literally, it feels like you can't get out. And even before I started getting coaching, I remember I used to, kind of the way I was living my life was, kind of interesting. It wasn't the best. And I remember feeling like I was so far gone, right? I'm so far gone. I'm not living the life that God's called me to live. Like, so if I just leave it, I wasn't living the life God called me to live. I was not the person that God said I was. And so I was so far gone. I could feel this. I felt like I was in deep water and it was no way out. I said, there's no way I can get out of this. Right. And so that was the biggest negative feedback loop that I was ever in, because at that point I personally felt hopeless. I personally felt like there was no coming back. Now, let me ask this question, because have you ever been in a situation where you felt like there's no coming back, or man, there's no way I can make it out of this. There's no way I can solve this problem. Look, I've been there. Like, in 2008, 9, when the economy collapsed, I had interesting thoughts in my head. I wasn't, there wasn't no mental health stuff back then. It was at least not like today. I probably had bad thoughts in my head, but no bad thoughts that I would hurt myself or do anything like that. But I felt like, man, life was it was over. And here's what happened. I just gave up. See, a lot of times when we're in these negative feedback loops, what happens is we literally allow that feedback to stop us. I'm talking about halt us from doing anything else, from becoming more of who we can be. See, the way God set this up, the way God set you and I up, what he did was he pre-programmed, he did. He pre-programmed you with special talents and gifts, pre-programmed. Now, here's the thing. In order to get access to these pre-programmed talents and gifts, you cannot be in the negative feedback. You cannot be in certain environments. Because look, if you're in the wrong environment, I'm not saying you can't thrive in a bad environment, because you can. However, the hard part about that, if you're in the negative feedback loop, then the environment is going to just keep you there. So I just remember living at a time where I just didn't feel like there was any hope. So how does a person get out of a negative feedback loop? Here's how. I'm gonna share with you. I'm gonna share exactly how I got out. First, I got help. Right. So I knew I needed to go to the doctor. Right. So I knew I needed to find help. I went and found the help. And in that case, it was a business coach. I got a business coach, and this business coach had experience. The business coach was, a little bit ahead of me, which is no problem. Like, they just need to be a little bit ahead. They don't have to be so far ahead, because he could still work with me. He could still get on the phone with me. He could, like, back then we didn't really do Zoom calls, but he could still talk to me and give me feedback. And so that day that we met, and he says, Jay, you're in a negative feedback loop, and this is how you're going to get out of it. I said, so how am I going to get out of this negative feedback loop? Because I want to get out. He says, look, when you're in this state, you got to drop whatever's negative, whatever results that you're hoping to get, forget the results and just go help somebody. He says, go help somebody do something. Go do something else. Go exercise. Go for a run. Go to the gym. Go do something in your house. Like, literally just go do something positive that you can get some positive feedback from. And I said, that's it? He says, yes. He says, but more importantly, because back then I was taking a lot of calls to talk to people. He says, when you do talk to a client, what you do is just help them. Literally just do as much as you can for somebody else. He says, you'll come out of this loop. I said, really? I said, yeah. Now, this is before I learned that I was creative. And so I'm like, okay. And I remember, I would just stop and I would go do something. I would, go for a run. I would call somebody, and then, hey, what are you working on? How can I help you? What can I do for you? It's like I'm like, oh, this feels so much better. I'm not in this loop. See, what's interesting, the way God pre-programmed you, he pre-programmed you to help people. He pre-programmed us to think about people the same way we could think about ourselves. That's a commandment. He says, love your neighbor as yourself. So here's the thing. I love myself so much that I can then love somebody else even when I'm in a negative feedback loop, because when I get with that person and help them, I'm going to get more out of it than they do, because it's going to take me to a place of almost bliss. Like, come on now. If you're anything like me, when you find yourself doing something good, it doesn't matter. It doesn't even matter because you don't have to get anything back. What you're getting back is the fact that you was able to give. It's like the person that gives, they get more out of the giving than the person who received. Sometimes the receiver, no, the giver gets more. The giver gets way more than the receiver. So when he taught me this, I was like, that is so interesting. Now here's the level up, because that's level one, right? Level one is that. The level up. Here's the level up. You get in a negative feedback loop, which I don't tend to get into those anymore. You got to get creative now. This is where you can find creativity. It's like, well, man. So if I was thinking about the things that I wanted to do in my life, or things I wanted to do for clients, or things I want to do for my family, whatever, what can I do right now? How can I take the knowledge that I have and create something, or start the creation process of something? And when I learned that we all are creative, like, because I didn't know I was creative. Like, I'm creative in the sense that, God's given me an ability just to be able to speak on a topic like account for your life, and like drawing all parts of my life and my business and my family, like to draw all things. I didn't know I could do that. I didn't know I could do that. Listen, all of this came out of negative feedback loops, right? Because when the coach coached me up after that first year, then all of a sudden I had this creative juice coming out of me. That was like, oh, I can do this. I can do this. I can do this. I can do that too. I can do this. Until today, it's like, I no longer find myself in a place where I feel like there's something that I can't accomplish. Now, you may not know how. Now, here's a clue to accomplishing anything that anybody want to know how you can accomplish anything? Okay. If you want to know how you can accomplish anything, the next time you are up against how you have to do something, don't ask how. Ask who. Who do I know, or who should I know, or who already knows about that thing? See, what I'm learning is that the moment you ask how or the moment I focus on how, I'm actually putting myself in the wrong feedback loop, because then I have to learn everything. Then I'm taking on all of the extra weight of trying to get all this extra knowledge when somebody else has it. I'm so glad that my friend Shauna, she found me, or she probably was more on the partnering up than I was at first, even though I knew it was good. Because Shauna doesn't know this, but I wrote her name down in my book in January as somebody to partner with, which I looked back at it recently. I was like, oh shoot, I did write that down. So I guess it was in my mind, but I wasn't quite focused on it. So what I found is that two heads are better than one. So instead of how can I grow a multi-7-figure business, how can I do it? Then it was, who else is on a similar trajectory that we could then come together and create a multi-7-figure enterprise. And look at what happened. We are in the midst of creating a multi-7-figure enterprise because we both understood that it wasn't just how, it was who. And ever since then, technically, everything that we've done for the past few weeks as we've worked together was who. We found people to do things that we had been trying to do. Oh, we found people to do some marketing things for us. We found people to, we've been paying other people for their house. See, and that's really how business works. So this negative feedback loop, guys, what happens is the first time you experience it, you come out of it because you go and do something to help somebody, right? So you go do something to help somebody, you go give, you go running, you go exercise, you have to do something to get your juices going. Then the next level goes to now, how can I create something? What can I create out of this feedback? Because I'm getting this feedback, but you know what? Then that means that there's a problem that I can solve because of that feedback, right? And then from the feedback, then you're going to get to the point where you say, well, how do I do that? Then you say, well, this is how I do it. I just find somebody else. I find I find another person who already knows, and then I bring that person into what I'm doing. I share the vision, I share the understanding, I share where I'm going and how this is going to work. And then next thing you know, you have gotten out of a feedback loop. You have leveled up your creativity, and then you have actually found other people to help you to go where it is that you want to go. So that's how you get out of the negative feedback loop. I could have put and grow yourself, grow your business, or grow whatever it is that you're trying to grow. So look, get out there, use this framework that literally God just gave me a second ago. Use this framework so that you can grow your life, grow your business, and become the person you're created to be. Guys, I appreciate you for joining me for this episode of the Account for Your Life podcast. I'm Jay Moore, the Healthy Accountant, helping you to account for your life. God bless, and I'll see you on the next episode. Peace.
Joining us, listening friends. We are so glad you invested this time with us. Always remember, you only have one life to live, so live it to the fullest. This has been the Account for Your Life podcast with your host, the healthy accountant himself, Jay Moore. Until next time, make it a great day.